This is Valorant, a game like CS but with spells and confused agents. Here's the story of how it became super popular, then faded away, got big again, and faded away again. The whole thing probably started around 2013, but who really knows? Riot doesn't exactly spill all the tea. What we do know is that by 2014, they were already messing around with some early prototypes that looked more like a CS knockoff than the game we know today. Now when it came to testing, Riot didn't waste time. They threw together some early versions of characters like Reyna and started seeing what stuck. The feedback must have been something because the game started taking a turn away from a CS ripoff towards something more Valorant-y. But yeah, it was a rough start. Think more beta than alpha, but hey, every game's gotta start somewhere, even if it's a bit of a mess. And now we're getting into the juicy part where Valorant started showing up on people's radars. Riot had been cooking this game for years, and finally, in 2019, they decided to give us a sneak peek. But those initial trailers and teasers didn't tell us anything. It was like trying to show us nothing but vague hints and dramatic shots. Hell, the game didn't even have a name yet. Then came 2020, and Riot decided to drop the beta like a bomb, as you should drop your massive hand onto that subscribe button, right? They teamed up with Twitch to create one of the biggest marketing stunts we've seen in gaming. Twitch drops. If you wanted to play the game early, you had to sit through hours of streams praying to the RNG gods for a beta key. And guess what? It worked. Valorant blew up overnight and Anomaly was the most watched streamer on Twitch. But the game itself, it was still rough around the edges. The early beta had that work in progress feel, with UI that looked like it was slapped together last minute, textures that could have come from a PS2 game, and gameplay mechanics that were still finding their footing. But you know what? People didn't care. They were hooked. And by the time the official release rolled around, Valorant was looking like a whole different game. The UI got a facelift, the textures got sharper, and the gameplay smoother than butter. They dropped Reyna, who quickly became everyone's favorite agent to love or hate, and introduced the first ever battle pass. Yeah, it was pretty basic, but it set the stage for what was to come. Riot knew they had to keep the momentum going, so they started cranking out updates. First, they gave us Spike Rush, a quick and dirty mode. Then came Deathmatch. And of course, we can't forget about Killjoy and Icebox. The community reaction was all over the place. Some players were hyped, loving every second of the new content. Others, not so much. There were plenty of complaints about balancing issues, buggy mechanics, and maps that felt like they were designed by someone who hated fun. But here's the thing, Riot actually listened. I know, a shocker. They didn't just sit back and watch the chaos unfold, they jumped in and started tweaking things. Quick updates, fast fixes, and a constant stream of communication kept most of the player base happy enough to stick around. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but Riot's no-nonsense approach to updates and community feedback made sure the game stayed fresh and fun. And that's how Valorant survived its first year, by giving the players what they wanted even if they didn't always know what that was. Thing that soon would change. 2021 was a wild ride for Valorant. Riot started the year by throwing in new agents like Yoru, Astra, KO, and Chamber, shaking up the meta like a snow globe. Yoru was supposed to be the flashy trickster agent, but he ended up being more of a joke than a game changer, at least until Riot had to buff him to make him halfway decent. Astra, on the other hand, came in with her Galaxy brain plays, controlling the map like no one else. She was so strong that Riot had to nerf her into the ground just to keep things fair. KO introduced suppression, which was a breath of fresh air, but not without its fair share of balance issues. And then there was Chamber, who started off as a sleeper agent but quickly became the most overpowered pick in the game until Riot finally put him in check after numerous patches. Riot didn't stop there, they also introduced new game modes to keep things fresh. Escalation was their take on gun game, and it was actually kinda meh. Replication, where everyone on the team played the same agent, was pure chaos but semi-decent. These modes were well received, but they also highlighted a growing issue. Riot was trying to do a lot, and not all of it was sticking. The community feedback in 2021 was a mixed bag. Some players were hyped about the new content, while others felt Riot was missing the mark, especially when it came to balancing. Chamber, in particular, became a hot topic, with his initial underwhelming release turning into an overpowered nightmare that took several patches to fix. It was clear that Riot was still figuring things out, and while they were quick to respond to some issues, others lingered far too long. Then came 2022 and it felt like Riot hit the brakes. The content updates slowed down and the player base started to notice. New additions like Neon, Fade and Harbor did their best to keep things interesting, but it was clear that something was off. Neon brought some high-speed action, and Fade's recon abilities added a new layer of strategy, but neither could fully shake off the growing sense that Valorant was losing its spark. Harbor was a decent addition, but by this point it felt like Riot was just going through the motions. As 2022 dragged on, the community's patience started to wear thin. Fewer updates meant less excitement, and it wasn't long before content creators and players alike started jumping ship. The game began to feel stale, with nothing new to keep it fresh or entertaining. Riot seemed to stop listening to the community as much as they used to, and that connection, which had been so strong in the early days, started to fade. The game that once had everyone talking was now at risk of becoming just another shooter in a crowded market. Now let's talk about what's in store for Valorant in 2024, or at least what Riot's pretending to have have in store. So far they've thrown a few new maps our way like Abyss, which is cool and all, but let's be honest, it's just another map. Since 2022 we've also got some new agents like Deadlock, ISO, Clove and Gecko. They were supposed to shake things up, but somehow the game still feels like it's running on fumes. Instead of focusing on giving us new game modes or something actually interesting to do, Riot decided to hike up the prices of skins. Because nothing says we care about our players like charging them more money for virtual cosmetics. It's 2024 and we still don't have a replay system. How is that even possible? Every other competitive game has one. It's like they're allergic to making the game better in ways that actually matter. Valorant started off as a rough idea back in 2013, went through some serious growing pains and hit the scene hard in 2020. The first couple of years were exciting with new agents, maps and modes dropping left and right, but then Riot seemed to lose the plot. 2022 was the beginning of the slump, and by 2024 it feels like they're just trying to get by. So yeah, that's the history, I guess.